Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games. In this episode, we talk about push your luck games.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast.
Thousands of games have an element of push your luck in them.
Some games have push your luck as its only mechanism,
And some have push your luck buried deep inside them as a small but integral part of the game.
Either way, push your luck adds tension and drama to in-game decisions.
Do I stop now and preserve my progress? Or do I continue for even more rewards and risk everything I've gained so far?
So go out on a limb and join us as we talk about games that press your luck. If you punch in push your luck games into Board Game Geek, just search for games that contain press your luck. There's 42 pages of results.
Wow.
There's a remarkable number of board games out there that have at least some element of press your luck.
Wow. That's interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's a huge amount.
What's interesting is that board games in general kind of evoke that mechanism in itself. Like Codenames is on this list. Codenames is a word game, it's a party game, it's a word association game. I wouldn't call it a press your luck game.
Right.
And yet there is a component where you kind of have to maybe guess in one of your turns, right? Maybe, I'm going to pick this or I'm going to pick that. And you kind of have to guess. And that falls into that sort of gamble, that wager.
I would not have put Codenames in press your luck. And to be honest, I'm still trying to think of how that is.
Towards the end of a game of Codenames, you are incentivized to guess more than you're comfortable in order to win, because the other team might be ahead by a few points.
Right.
And so there is that kind of sort of push it a little bit, because we don't have enough clues to go on, but if we don't guess an extra clue on this round, we're going to lose.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's definitely a lot of games that use it.
We talked about the Quacks of Quedlinburg in our deck building episode, and that has got a huge press your luck component to it.
No, it's true, and it's one of the better ones.
I think the most ubiquitous and the most common and the most understood form of press your luck would be blackjack.
Yep.
In blackjack, you have to get to 21 with your cards in front of you. If you go over, you're bust.
Right.
You need to get as close to 21 as possible.
Yeah.
You need to beat the dealer and you want to get under 20. Yeah. It is very distilled to that mechanism. Do I want to continue or do I want to stop? And in blackjack, it's very simple. You get two cards.
Right.
You look at them, you add them up, and you can simply ask for another card or you don't.
Yep.
And that's your choice.
Yep.
Very, very simple. But I think out of all the games we're going to talk about, the one you're going to present first is, again, the most distilled version of this mechanism that we can find.
Yeah. When I think of press your luck games, this is the first one that comes to mind for me. Can't Stop. Can't Stop is a dice rolling, racing press your luck game for 2 to 4 players, ages 9 and up, that plays in about 30 minutes. Can't Stop was designed by Sid Saxon in 1980 and is currently being published by Eagle Gryphon Games. Can't Stop, the board looks like a stop sign. Fitting with the name of the game.
Yeah.
It's a stop sign because you cannot stop. And the whole mechanism is push your luck. The board has 11 different tracks on it, and they go from 2 to 12. And you get 4 dice on your turn. You roll the 4 dice, and you're going to take any combination of 2 of them, and you're going to add them together.
Right.
And then you're going to add the other 2 together. So now you've come up with 2 numbers that range between 2 and 12.
So you have a possibility of 3 different sets of 2 numbers.
Yes, sometimes you will. Sometimes, if you rolled all 4, maybe you just have one number twice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's possible up to have to 3 different numbers.
Nice.
So once you've decided what sets of dice that you're going to use, you have 3 sort of temporary markers.
Okay.
And you put those markers on those numbers. So if you rolled a 7 and a 5, you'd put one of your temporary markers on the 7, you'd put the other one on the 5.
These are tracks that you're racing on.
Exactly.
Each number is a different track. There's 11 of them.
And each one of them is a little different in length. Like the 7 is the longest, and the 6 and the 8 are the second longest.
Right. They're the easiest numbers to roll. So, of course, yeah.
And then the 2 and the 12, they're the shortest track. That's the quickest way to the top. And basically, you're racing along these tracks with these temporary tokens, these temporary markers, and you want to get to the top of 3 different tracks to win the game.
Yeah.
What happens is if you roll the dice and you roll one of your 3 numbers that your temporary marker is on, then you get to advance your temporary marker on that track.
So if you rolled a 7 before and you rolled a 7 again, you just move that marker up.
You move up to 7.
Cool.
Exactly. And you keep doing that until you decide at some point you want to stop. And if you decide to stop, you replace your 3 temporary markers with permanent markers, the color that you've chosen. So I'm blue, you're green. I take my 3 temporary markers off the board and I replace them with my blue markers. And at the beginning of my next turn, I'm going to start with my progress saved from this round.
Sure, on those tracks. But you could bust.
Yes. So how do you bust? You could bust by rolling a number that doesn't have one of your 3 temporary markers.
Sure.
You only have 3, right?
Yeah. So if you've rolled a 6, 7, and 8, then your temporary markers are on the 6, 7, and 8.
Right.
And if in a future round you're going to roll a 5 and a 6, well, then you get to move the 6, but you can't put something down on the 5 because you don't have any temporary markers left.
Exactly.
So in a future turn, you could roll numbers that would advance you on tracks that you don't have markers on. And that's when you can't have a turn. There's no options available. You're bust. You take all your temporary markers off the board. You lose all your progress that round.
Yep.
It's so disheartening.
Yeah. So like if you advanced, 4 times on the 7 track and 5 times on the 5 track, and then you roll something that you can't use.
Yeah.
Then you're bust and you lose all your progress. So if you've gone up 3 times this round, you lose that progress. You have to start back where your permanent marker was.
Yeah.
And if you bust on your first turn, then you have no progress at all. You have to start all over on your second turn. And it's quite possible, if you push your luck really, really a lot and you have bad rolling, you could bust the first few times right away. Like it could happen. It just depends on how comfortable you are with the risk of the roll. The winner is the person who gets all the way to the top. But what happens when you get all the way to the top is now no one else can use that track.
Yeah. If you're the first to get to 7, no one can win 7 anymore. Those 7's completely blocked off.
Exactly. And all your 5s and 2s have to be used on something else, or they go towards you possibly busting your turn and losing out on any progress. So what ends up happening is the person who is in the lead, like say I got 2 of my markers to the top, it's very likely that I'm going to win, but it becomes harder for everyone, including myself, to progress because now I only have 1 marker.
Yeah.
So let's say it's on the 9. So I have to roll 9, at least 1 9 out of 2 of the 4 dice every time I play because I've only that 1 spot kind of thing to progress. Now I still have the 3 temporary markers and I can still progress on other ones, but it just becomes harder because the 7, the 8, which I finished, are the more common numbers.
Yeah.
So it becomes harder for everyone. And it's a race to get 3 of your tokens to the top.
And it's called Can't Stop for a reason because you're so motivated to well, how hard is it to roll a 7? Of course I'm going to roll a 7. I got markers on 5, 6, and 7. There's no way I can't roll at least one of those numbers. With these 4 dice, I'm going to roll. Of course I'm going to, right? Of course I am.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy.
There's a huge combination of 2 dice that you can roll a 7 with.
Exactly.
So if you've got a 7, you can easily progress 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times on that one number on your turn.
Until you can't.
Until you can't, and you get greedy and then you bust.
Yeah.
And it really, really illustrates the idea of a pressure luck, push your luck kind of game perfectly.
Yeah.
Because it's right there in the name, because you literally are going, oh, I just progressed 3 times on that one. I'm going to roll one more time.
So easy.
Oh, that was good. I did a 4th time. I'm going to go one more time. Okay, I didn't get a 7 that time, but I got a 4. So I went up on 4, and I only need a couple more to get to the top of 4. I'm just going to roll one more time. Oh, now I'm busted. There's a lot of groaning and laughing and egging on your competition in a game of Can't Stop.
Yeah, you can't take this game too seriously, because it can be frustrating if you get, really invested.
And it's luck, right? I mean, it depends on what you roll. There's some strategy, and you can, look at the statistics of what's more likely to be rolled.
Sure.
It's actually a really good game for teaching, dice and statistics to younger people.
Dice probability, yeah, it would be. It's a very good graphical representation, even the board itself.
Right.
Because the 12 row is only like 4 or 5 steps. Like, you only need to roll a 12 like a few times in order to complete 12. So you're like, oh, that's easy. But then you realize, oh, wait, no, I need 2 6s to do that.
Yeah.
And with 4 dice, how often am I doing that?
Yeah.
Not very often.
Exactly. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to take the easy route and do the 12. And I only moved up once the whole game because I didn't roll 2 6s.
Yeah.
It's definitely not, a deep strategic game or whatever.
No.
It plays really, really short and plays really well at, all the player counts. I think it plays up to 4. It's a good game. Yeah. It was made in 1980. It's a 40 plus year old game.
Still going. I've seen some themed, like the traffic cones are yeah, that's kind of neat. They sit on pegs or whatever.
Yeah, and they kind of stack.
Yeah.
Because, like if I'm the blue player and you're the green player, or no, sir, you'd be the red player.
Yes, of course, I would be the red player, obviously.
Yeah. And your token goes onto the square of the track that mine is on. With those cones, they just kind of stack on top. They're kind of neat, yeah. It is a game that I really like. It's not one that I play very often, but it's the epitome, I think, of what pressure luck is, and
absolutely
that tension of just one more turn. I can do it. And when do I stop? I think really that tension comes up quite well.
So I entered into the board game hobby a little later than you, and a little after I got into it, they came out with a slightly prettier version of what you've just described.
Yeah, that's a good description of it for sure.
Celestia. Celestia is a dice-rolling, bluffing, airship adventure press your luck game for 2 to 6 players ages 8 and up that plays in about 30 minutes. Celestia was designed by Aaron Weisblum and published by Blam in 2015. In Celestia, all the players are aboard this beautifully crafted cardboard airship.
Yeah, it's this beautiful little cardboard model. And I would describe it as kind of like a steampunk sort of look to it.
It's got a boat thing to it, but we're in the clouds. Right? And you punch it all out of cardboard, but then you piece it together, and then it sits on the table, and it holds all the player pawns, and it kind of sits off the table.
The airship has this totally irrelevant detail that I think is so cool. It has a propeller that actually spins and moves. All made out of cardboard, not part of the game at all, not necessary.
Yeah.
It's very cool looking on its own. And then you flick the propeller and it literally spins. And it's elevated, like you said, off the board, off the table, so that, it looks a little bit more like you're flying through the clouds. It's a neat little component, and it's entirely made out of cardboard. Perfect.
And it will ride along this path of tokens that you've laid out on the table. Each location that the airship goes to is marked by a token and a matching deck of cards, and each depicting a beautiful, floating, mystical city. And then there's points associated with each of these locations. And the higher you go up in locations, the more points are associated with them. Because if you make it to that spot and you get out of the airship, you get to collect a card from the matching deck.
Right.
And that's where we get our victory points from. In a typical round, one player is given the role of being the captain, and each player is given a handful of cards. And those cards are going to help us navigate the obstacles that the captain will face. On your turn as the captain, you start the turn by rolling some dice, and depending on which city they're trying to get to. At the beginning, we're rolling 2 dice. A little bit later, if you get that far, you're rolling 3 dice, and very, very at the end, they're rolling 4 dice, but we very rarely get there.
That's true.
These dice will have obstacles that you'll have to overcome. Maybe there's some birds in the air or the lightning storm. Each of these icons will come up on the dice, and it is the captain's job to mitigate them by playing cards from their hand.
Yeah.
After you've rolled those dice, you look at your hand, and then you wait for each of the other players in turn order to decide whether or not to stay on the airship with you or to get off and find out if you can mitigate these dangers or not.
Right. And if they get off, they get that card that'll have some points in them. But what's really cool about being the captain is if the ship crashes, you crash. You really can't get out of it unless you've got the jetpack kind of thing. So you want to have this sort of really stoic face. You want to look like, yeah, we got this. I got this. It's 3 icons. I've got 3 cards. They're all the 3 cards that I need. Don't worry about it. I got this.
Because you want everybody to go down.
You want everyone to crash with you, which is the fun part of the game, right? Is convincing or bluffing everyone else at the table to come with you into the fiery death.
Because that's how you win.
Yeah, well, you don't get any points, but no one else gets any points either.
That's right. You don't want anybody else to get points.
If they jump out and you're the only one that crashes, because you can't jump out as the captain.
That's right.
They get points. Even if they're only just a couple of points, they get points and you get none. Hopefully, eventually, you'll get a big payday by pushing your luck and going really far, and all those chickens who left early don't get those points and you'll make that up.
That's right.
But there's no guarantees in this game.
So there's a little bit of bluffing there for sure when it comes to this game.
Yeah.
From planet to planet, you got to look at your captain and find out how many cards have they, because you know how many cards they have, but you don't know what cards they are.
Exactly. And it's really this unknown, right? Because you could look at the guy's hand and he has like 6 cards and 5 of them could be the same symbol.
Yeah.
And, that's the captain. The captain's got 6 cards. He's going to pass this. It's easy. There's only one symbol. Well, he doesn't have that symbol.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah. If we crash a ship, everybody gets nothing. We go back to the beginning. I think you get a couple more cards from the deck, right? Just
One
when
more,
you start
yeah.
your new round. And then we start from square one again.
So you go all the way back to the beginning of this little track of cities and you have to start over.
Yeah.
No one actually dies. There's no health points. There's no damage that's done.
You don't lose anything you've already acquired.
Yeah. And so it's like this really democratic steampunk society where I'm the captain of the ship from this city to the next city. And then I'm not the captain anymore. I'm going on for a ride and you become the captain.
That's right.
And I don't have to make any more decisions about whether we live or die. You have to. And if you get us to the next city, your job as captain is done and it goes to the next player.
Yeah.
It's this really sort of democratic way of doing things. I don't know how that makes sense thematically, but it's this steampunk sky adventure that we're on.
It's a great game for like kids, 7-8-year-old kids. The art's beautiful and the components are great and their choice is really simple.
Yeah.
Right? On the turn, do we stay or do we go?
Yeah, it's very fun. It's a great game. I recently brought it to our board game night and we played it with 6 players and it was a huge hit.
Oh, nice.
Everyone's laughing and giggling and, people went home saying, I got to buy this game. I like this game. And
right on.
that kind of thing. Yeah, it was a big, big hit. And I hadn't played it in a while and was very, very happy with it. So that's a good push your luck game.
Nice. All right. We're going to get back to the show after a brief message. This next ad is for Chris's own company, Geeky Goodies. If you'd like to hear what an ad for your product, game, or website might sound like, Escape into Board Games is looking for sponsors. Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com.
When we escape into board games, we're always wearing our Geeky Goodies t-shirts.
They are great conversation starters for gamers and non-gamers.
But did you know that they also sell drink coasters, socks, mouse pads, cupcake toppers, and so much more?
All things board games.
All things geeky.
Visit geekygoodies.com and use coupon code ESCAPE for a 10% discount off your purchase. 10. 10 is an abstract game with set collection, auctioning, and push your luck for 1 to 5 players ages 10 and up. It plays in 15 to 30 minutes and was designed by Molly Johnson, Robert Melville, and Sean Stankwich and was published in 2021 by AEG. So a game of 10, it's a card game with some stone tokens that you use for currency. There's cards in 4 different colors from 1 to 9. There's no 10 card in 10. And you're trying to collect a full set or as full of set as you can of each color. You get a point for every card in your set as long as they're all consecutive. You just take your longest stretch.
Right.
And you're doing that by basically you're flipping cards on your turn. There's a deck of cards and you're going to flip the top card of the deck up. Sounds really kind of boring and simple. And if that was all it was about, obviously that would be true. What happens is the number cards that come out are what you want to collect into your sort of play area. And then there's another, half of the deck or third of the deck that are just these white cards that have these currency tokens on them. And, they have between 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 different currencies on them. They look like pips of a dice. As you're flipping cards, you flip one and then you decide whether you're going to continue or stop, much like all the other push your luck games. And you want to make sure that you don't get above 10. So the numbers add up. If you drew a 2 and then a 3, so now you're at 5, and then you drew another 3, so now you're at 8.
Okay.
So now is probably a good time to stop because anything more than 10, you're going to bust.
Yeah.
But here's the catch, is those cards that have currency on them are subtracted from your total. So if I drew up 2 number cards, a 3 and a 5, and then I drew up a 4 currency card, that's minus 4. So my total right now is only 1.
Cool.
Positive 5 minus 4 is 1. So that I can keep drawing. And then I drew a 5, now I'm at 6. And I drew another minus 1, now I'm back at 5, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you do that until you decide to stop or you bust. If you bust, you don't get to add cards to your collection. Instead, what you would get for busting is a bust token. And a bust token is the same as the currency tokens, except they're white and they're worth 3 currency, basically. And that's kind of a catch-up mechanism. It's not a reward, but a consolation prize for not adding to your play area, not adding to your set collection, right? And it's also kind of a way to encourage players to keep pushing their luck, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this game is push your luck, push your luck, push your luck. In the deck, there's also mixed in these other cards that are wild. They can be used as wild. Some of those wilds can only be used in a certain color. So it has like a little hashtag on it, and it can be used as any number of that color. So if it's a blue hashtag, it can be used as any number of blue.
Yeah.
And then the other cards have a number and they have all the colors on them. So they can be used anywhere, but only of that number.
Got it.
Like most of these games, there are more 1s, 2s, and 3s than there are, 7, 8, 9s. I think there's only ones of each 7, 8, 9 in the game kind of thing. So as you go up higher in numbers, there's less of them and it's harder to get them. What I love about the game is if you don't bust, there's this sort of decision that you have to make. And I'm not a game designer, but I love games that give you this option of me getting something that I want and having to give you something that I want. I can't get both. I can only get one, and I get to choose because it's my turn. So if I didn't bust, I get the choice of taking all the numbered cards and adding them to my set collection, and I'll get points for them at the end of the game. Or I can take all of the currency cards, add them up, and I'll get currency equal to their value. And those number cards go into the market. And then later on a future turn, whoever doesn't bust can actually buy from the market. You get a chance to buy.
With this money you've been collecting.
With this money. Yeah, exactly. And the cards that cost what they are. So a 6 costs a 6, a 7 costs a 7. And you have to have, a lot of those currency to be able to buy them. So that's what you're doing with the currency. But there's an auction mechanism to buy the wild cards. Mm-hmm. So every time a wild card comes out, the game kind of pauses. And we start bidding on, you get one shot to bid to take that wild card. And, I bid 3, so you have to bid 4. And then the current player gets the last bid. So your currency is used to buy cards that you are missing in your set in the market. And it's also used to buy these wild cards that you might be missing in your set. So it's I can't say it's easy, but it's very friendly in the term that it's not that hard to get a set of cards.
Yeah, it's intuitive. Right. Yeah.
And there's lots of opportunities in different ways to do that. And the currency has different uses, and you're getting currency on a lot of turns. So like if it's your turn and you took cards, everyone else at the table gets the sum total of all your currency. So we're getting something even though you're getting it. And I love that sort of push and pull. Like I'm going to take this, valuable 5 card that I need to complete my set, but I'm giving everyone at the table 8 currency that they can then buy all kinds of stuff that they want, that I want too, right? And that sort of conflict of decision-making it's really rich. Like it just feels so good and aggravating. Like, oh man, I've got to take this or that. And I've got to give everyone all this good stuff, or there's a 9 in there. But so if I take the currency, someone else can buy the 9 and there's only one of that color in the whole deck and da-da-da-da-da. It's just, it's this great push and pull. And the push your luck comes from flipping a card. That's all you're doing on your turn. I flip one card, I can stop. I can flip another card and another card and another card. And as long as my number doesn't reach 10, I'm good. I can keep going or I stop. Your choices aren't astronomical of what you can do on your turn. They're very, very limited. It's an easy game to learn and figure out. And a lot of the rules make sense. Like you can only have 10 currency tokens at a time and that kind of thing. And 10 is the number that you stop. So like it just makes sense that way. And it's not particularly mean. Like I can't buy another 4 card from the market if I already have a 4 of that color to block you. It's a friendly game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
10, great little party game, plays up to 5 players. I think they missed an opportunity to make it play up to 10, but really easy to play and very, very fun.
Yeah, very intuitive game. I like this one a lot.
It's the kind of game that I think, if you had only ever played like games like Uno, I would bring out 10, because if you liked Uno, you're going to love 10.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But it's also the kind of game that, as you know, I'll bring to a game convention and play with, gamers who have played hundreds of games and have 500 games in their collection, because there's interesting choices in it, and it doesn't hang around long. It's not an hour-long card game. It's 20, 25 minutes, and we play it, and it's over, and it was fun, and it was good, and there were some interesting choices. That's 10.
Nice. Love that game. I like how in 10, there's quite a bit going on. It's not press your luck distilled to its core. There's set collection, hand management,
auctioning.
The next game that I want to present is a lot of things and has press your luck deep inside. Above and Below. Above and Below is a worker placement, storytelling, tableau building, press your luck game for 2 to 4 players, ages 13 and up, that plays in about 90 minutes. Above and Below was designed by Ryan Lockett and published by Red Raven Games in 2015. Your last village was ransacked by barbarians. You barely had time to pick up the baby and your favorite fishing pole before they started the burning and pillaging. You ran from that place in the dark of night and wandered over a cruel desert, braving frozen peaks and crossing a rough sea filled with sharks. Then you found it, the perfect place to make your new home. But as soon as you had the first hut built, You discover a vast network of caverns underground, brimming with shiny treasures, rare resources, and endless adventure. Now, you're organizing expeditions and building your village above and below.
Nice.
That's page 1 of the rulebook, and there's nice, beautiful illustrations. I don't know if you know much about Ryan Lockett, but he designs, illustrates, writes, and publishes all of his games, and they are gorgeous.
They are very gorgeous. He is the master at drawing faces. I feel like the characters on the tiles are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Like they just have so much personality and they all look a little different and they just kind of come to life in the same way that like a Disney Pixar character comes to life.
Oh, yeah, totally. Or a Miyazaki movie, right? Like they've got that each year. You're right. So you start this game with a handful of workers, and these workers are these little tiles with, like you said, the character's face on them. And some of them will have special abilities, like one's a builder and one's a recruiter, right? When you start the game, everybody gets a handful of these workers, and me and my family, we always like to pick the characters that we like. I mean, the starting characters are all the same. They all have the same abilities, but quite often I'm like, oh, I want the girl with the blue hair.
Do you guys name them?
No, we don't.
No? we often name the characters.
But they're little characters, and you become attached to them, and they're like, yeah, they're gonna serve me well in my adventures.
Yeah.
You put them in your tableau. Everybody has a board that represents the sort of their portion of the village where your hut is, and your hut has beds for sleeping. Throughout the game, you're expanding these buildings, and you put cards down and you lay them out next to your tableau, and that gives you more resources and more huts and eventually more workers. And it is very much like a classic worker placement game where you are making choices to turn this into that and getting resources, and those resources are giving you points.
Cool.
But where Above and Below really differs is this delving into the below and going on these adventures. And you don't get to do it right off the bat because there's some preparation involved before you go below. But when you do, you read a chapter like a Choose Your Own Adventure book. You pull out this ringed book from the box. There's a card that you pull, and then you roll some dice, and that will tell you which adventure you get. And then another player at the table will read this paragraph out to you. And I don't want to give you any spoilers, but there are more than one kind of species that live below. Some are friendly, some are foe. And the more you delve into the depths and the more stories that you hear, the more knowledge that you get about who you're dealing with and the kinds of things you can expect. And then there's this push your luck element. There's this press your luck component right here in this challenge of this Choose Your Own Adventure component. Maybe you've come across a beggar and they've asked for your assistance. You can choose to assist them. You can choose to flee or search. They'll be given a list of choices, but there'll be a series of successes that you'll need to roll in order to achieve that. So if you want to do the search, well, you have to hit a 5 or a 6,
okay,
right? If you want to run away, you have to get the 2 or a 3.
Okay.
And so you make those decisions first, and then you roll the dice. And depending on how many characters you've brought down with you, right? Each of those characters is a worker. If you bring 3 workers with you, well, then you have barely any workers to do anything else this round. But now you got 3 workers with you. You get to roll more dice on those checks. You get to do the more difficult tasks.
A better chance of succeeding.
Exactly. And it's quite interesting that this press your luck now is like deep inside the game. After you've done all this typical worker placement things and all these other, resource stuff that we're familiar with, and now we're reading a story, and now we have to roll these dice.
Yeah. I love that choose your own adventure kind of storytelling in a game. Like we've talked about Tales of Arabian Nights before.
Yeah.
What I loved about playing Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games as a teenager was that sort of, you're confronted with this story and then you've got a series of choices. And, usually those choices are attack, run away, be good or be bad.
Yeah.
You stumble into an echoing candlelit chamber strewn thickly with spider silk. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the room also contains a large number of oversized spiders as well. But oddly enough, each spider in the room seems exceptionally well dressed, elegant even. Most are seated while a few rest their abundant limbs on these silly strands. One spider coughs politely, as if to suggest that you are interrupting something. One chair remains unoccupied. Like, that is so intriguing.
And you'll be given a choice, right? You either sit with them and you try to negotiate.
Or attack them or run away, I guess. Or there's not like 8 choices. It's usually the good thing or the bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually 2, maybe 3 things. But maybe one thing will have a success if you roll a 5 and another different kind of success if you roll a 6. So like if you could explore. And if you explore 5, you get one thing. If you explore 6, you get another thing. And so what's happening is all the workers that you've brought with you will have lanterns associated with a dice roll. So maybe your typical worker, if you roll a 4, he's good for 3 lanterns. But if you roll a 1, he's good for 2 lanterns. Well, that's pretty good, right? You bring him along, he's going to be good for at least 2 lanterns.
Right.
You could bring another guy along, and he's going to give you 4 lanterns if you roll a 5. Well, that's great, but he's not going to give you any lanterns unless you roll a 5.
Right.
So these kinds of things. And then you bring them along with you, and then you roll the dice, and then you associate each of the dice to each of the people, and figure out how many lanterns that you're going to get on that adventure. And that's, the more lanterns, obviously, the better the reward. If you don't succeed, if you are a lantern short, then you can strain one of your workers. He becomes injured, but gives you an extra lantern, and then maybe pushes you that much further in order to get you that reward that you want. But in then future rounds, that worker will need an extra round for healing or maybe some medicine to get him back up on his feet.
Makes sense.
So it is this big kind of sprawling adventure, right? Because there's these stories you're reading and you're spelunking into these caves. There's all sorts of buildings and upgrades that you can purchase or build that will give you recurring resources. Those resources that you're collecting, either from the buildings that you build or from the cave adventures, will go into your cellar along the bottom of your tableau, and that's where you can get some significant victory points and sort of a set collection kind of thing.
Cool. It's a great game. It's adorable. It's a lot of fun. The worker placement part is a good game in itself.
Yeah.
And the choose your adventure part is a good half of the game, that kind of thing. Personally, what I found with it was I wanted more of the choose your adventure part. I guess because that is so, there are not a lot of games like that. I kind of wanted the worker placement to be its own game, and then let's do the choose your adventure side. And let's just play that for 2 hours kind of thing.
Yeah, it does take a lot of resources in order to go on those adventures. Like you need a lot of workers in order to succeed in some of those adventures. So you want to make sure you have a lot of them. So there's all this prep work that you need because you start the game with only 3 workers. So you have to do what you need to get done in order to get another worker. You need to build a building. So if that worker's got a place to sleep, then you need to recruit the worker. So there's all these things, these steps that you need to do. It kind of makes it feel like the adventure is like a bit of a big deal, right? Because we're prepping so much to get down there. And it can be a bit of a letdown when you actually get down there with your 4 beefed up guys and you're ready to roll handfuls of dice, and then you're given a very simple obstacle of like, right. Oh, I just need 3 here. Here's your, you get some twine and maybe a mushroom, and then off you go with you, right? And you're like, I wanted something cool like amethyst.
Very, very good. I love the art. I love the storytelling part of it. It comes to life in a really fun way.
Have you played any of the games that we've talked about today? What's some of your favorite Press Your Luck games? Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Escape Into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Escape Into Board Games. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. It helps more people discover Escape Into Board Games. You can get an Escape Into Board Games t-shirt at geekygoodies.com/escape. Or you can help us fuel the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/escape-into-BGS.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Sound editing by Matt McKenzie. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut, Daniel Carlton, and Roman Senyek. See you at the next escape.